Beginning September, I forgot to use my damn partisans for economic warfare. I'll use them next turn because I'm not going to be doing any attacks with the Russians in the near future, I don't think. So there's no real reason that they'd serve much purpose defensively. We had the Turks try their attack. No effect. They did an assault. But we did have a Hungarian-Italian combined assault here, which pushed this unit back. And now I've got the Germans steaming in and striking them. And I've got one of those hard choices. I used a tank on the first battle. I could be in the same position as I was last turn, where, oh, I've got more tanks now. Where I expend too much of my resources down here and end up allowing things to plow through there, and I don't want to be in that position. Now, these planes got knocked out by the Germans in the south as well, which kind of bones me because it means I don't get my southern support there. But I'm more worried about breaking this nut right there than anything else. And the question is, do the Russians want to commit another tank to defend this poor unit that's probably going to die? I think the answer is no. But, it's a tough choice because that opens everything up. There's another Italian unit that can come in, potentially hit Odessa. This guy's free to maybe make a strike north or swing down towards Odessa. It's just that whole southern area becomes opened up if I don't throw all my defenses into it. But what we saw was the whole northern area became opened up if I did. So, tough call on whether or not I want the diplomacy action here. The Germans have 14 points left. 9 of them are going to the aeroplanes to repair my planes. All the planes are down. The Russians have provided significant air and some armor to prevent the Germans from pushing any further in the north. You can see they've just caved the south in now. And yeah, we're down to 7 willpower. And the Russians aren't going to be able to stay in this war very long. Now, there isn't a lot left that I can do with these units. The production that I have, I've got some stuff that long range I could pull out of the Latvia sector that I was planning on attacking there. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't even know where. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I couldn't even get an attack in. I've got 1 unit here that could either attack across here, across the river, or across the river here. I've kind of pushed them out of, what is this? Veliki Luki. And I just don't see much help to that. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to save for diplomacy. I'm probably going to end up putting the political failure in the cup. Because I don't particularly want to draw the political successes. I think I still have, I have 1 in the cup right now. You're allowed to look in the cup whenever you like. Just make sure to shake it so you don't know what you're drawing. And a lot of no events. And I'd rather not have the Allies plucking, in particular, my event out of there. So, I think I'm going to stop there and let the Russians take their move. Now, again, still theoretically there's an Allied move in there, but until I start getting close to the pact ending, the appeasement ending here, I don't have to worry too terribly much about what's going on. And I'm more worried about Russia at that point again, because they're going to be all recharged. Before I go on, there was a statement I made about, hey, this was kind of the high water mark of the Russians or something like that, or of the Germans. It's not. Actually, what it turns out it is, I think, is to represent the borders of the territories that aren't Russia themselves. So you've got the Crimea in here, and you've got, the particular projection makes it look like a much bigger area. But Moscow's all the way over here. And the Russians wouldn't give that up, and your Belarus and stuff like that. So it's not, it actually fits a reasonable projection of what the Soviets might have given up as occupied territory. It's kind of weird because they're allowed to still produce out of the factories there. The Russians get like 1 point per factory or something. So it just becomes occupied territory, kind of like it was in World War I. Except the Russians come back in this. We can push into October. You see the Soviets were mainly in position, so they didn't have to spend a lot. They also are beginning to gear up and have a lot of points available. So they actually got most of their units on the board at this point. Well, they built everything. They didn't recharge this air unit, hoping it gets overrun or cut off from supply so that they can pull it off the map or whatever. They did recharge the others though, so a decent amount of points were available. And for the diplomacy, well, the Germans threw the no event and the bad event, the failure into the pit. And both the Allies and Russians went drawing, and they successfully killed the pro-Axis marker from there without any additional harm being done, which is cool from their point of view. That means the Germans have to do more to try and position themselves for some kind of diplomatic successes. They don't really want to be the guys to throw the chits into the cup, the positive ones. So, but without them, they can't really do what they want to do terribly well either. All right. In some sense, you might have made some argument that the Allies wanted to get Finland into the war for the Russians, but they really kind of want to wait until after Russia falls to do that. Because it's possible that if Leningrad fell, then Finland could be conquered, and that would cause just more problems for the Germans there. More problems for the Allies in the long run with, a marker in Sweden saying it's pro-Axis. And Sweden probably, I don't know. I don't know my counter mix here at all, but Sweden's got to have a decent size army. Of course, 20th century Sweden isn't 18th century Sweden, but doesn't look too much. Looks a little smaller than Finland's. I don't know, but you're hoping it's enough that it could take out Norway. It would be an interesting choice for the Germans, just because they're going to need the ability to hit Norway, I think, and may have to actually spring the $20 for an invasion capability. Who knows when, though, I'm also going to have to kind of pay attention. I think if I attack more things, they become Soviet aligned, even if the West isn't in the, even if the Soviet, the Moscow Treaty is in place. As long as the Western Allies aren't actually opposing the Axis. And there's a long time before that happens. Well, it's October again, and it seems like every year this happens, but the weather gets worse. It reminds me of a time I was at a bar, and I looked up and the full moon was up. And I seemed and I was really shocked, and I expressed it. It seems like just 2 weeks ago there wasn't a moon there at all. I have trouble accepting the normal things. Anyway, the strategic warfare was kind of the most interesting thing here. Both the partisans and the submarines were used. It went badly for the Germans, which means Russians got their factory back and the Germans are back one. And however, on the other side, the Germans get the sub back next turn. And remember, that halves the die roll of your opponent, as does the partisans. So it's a very powerful effect to the economic warfare. There's nothing you can do. There's really nothing the Germans can do with a sub otherwise, I think. They might be able to do use it in some surface, in some capacity in a surface battle. Yeah, in an air-naval combat in which both have a naval surface unit of some sort, you're able to apply a die roll modifier to your opponent, which is useful too, but not really when it's Germany against Russia like this. And the partisans, well, again, that throws a -2 on a particular location. You place it as your own action, and let's see, I think it goes away at the end of your action phase. Yeah, so it's really only useful if you're conducting offensives on that side. But again, it's got this secondary use, which is of some value. There are some counters that have almost no use. For example, the Russian ground support counter. It's useful if Norway is being attacked or some other ally of mine. Ooh. You know, I decided not to attack Latvia, and I think wisely, and actually shifted forces out of there because of the weather situation. But I would have been able to knock Finland out. I forgot that I had that marker there. But with the poor weather and just infantry attacking, I don't know if it was guaranteed that I'd take Latvia. You know what? They don't like poor weather, so I don't think I'm going to do that. Yeah, I'll stick with this. What the hell? But I may want to maybe shift an Italian unit up there to help the Germans and launch an attack if the weather gets severe. So, one thing that's kind of interesting here, most World War II East Front situations, the Germans pretty much feel like they have to really wreck the Soviet Union. You know, Leningrad and Moscow, maybe Stalingrad, maybe all three have to fall, whatever. 2 out of the 3. Why Stalingrad, I'm not sure, but because you have to justify that battle. Anyway, in this one, and this wouldn't be if I went west first because Russian morale is higher, but in this one my goals are much more limited. I need to knock out 7 more will. I can do that by killing pieces, and I can do that by basically taking cities. Each city's worth 2. My guess right now is if I can take, let's see, Smolensk, Bryansk, and Kharkov, I've got it. You know, I'm going to kill a unit in that process. I can probably do it otherwise, but obviously the Soviet line's gotten a lot denser in this last turn. I'm not quite sure why I wasn't able to build units before. I'm always kind of wondering, where'd my points go? What's going on, man? How come I got more now? I don't have the pattern of that down in my head, and maybe I'm making mistakes, or maybe I'm just not paying attention to something and something's disappearing from my memory that I spent on. Because I didn't feel like I had a lot of units the turn before, but boy, I didn't have enough to build all my units either, and now I have enough. Of course, I did not pay for one of these planes, so that's 3 more units there for that. That gives me a more dense situation, but there's some definite risks here. Now, there's also the possibility of this line right here, the rich 3 cities right there, if I had a lot of force here, but I'm kind of overrunning or outrunning my positioning, and it's tough to do. So I've got to focus and try to figure out how to get those 7 points, because after that it doesn't matter. We fall back to the control line. And I think no matter how many times I defeat Russia, it's always going to return to that same position. It's just, all right, you're out for a while now, more or less. They're still kind of at war. It's just the limitation. It's more of a limited war. And it kind of, you get the same kind of thing out of Hitler's war. If you, I think if you defeat Russia in Hitler's war, they're still able to kind of do things against you, but they're not able to come in full strength. But here they will come in full strength again. All right, I'm just trying to delay because I know this is going to be a big painful one with all these units, and the fact that I'm not sure the Germans really want to do anything to the cup. There's nothing useful in there, some no events and a political failure. They sure as hell don't want to put a political success in. Why bother? Why bother with a draw? So that's 5 more production points I have to spend on fighting. Okay, so we're in the midst of the German advances. I think they're beginning to wear down at this point. Managed to knock out, I think, a couple of Soviet units, certainly the one that was here. You can see the Italians were preparing an assault there, but I didn't have to do it. I used this infantry, managed to smash through on its own. If I had had a failure, it's possible I would have gone to an assault and wanted to use that unit. So far, all the air power that the Soviets have is gone. The Germans have 2 sorties left here. They have a 4 sortie here. But it's out of range of everything. So I can move it and do 1 air sortie. And I will use it, I think. I used all the rest to knock out the Soviet air power. But I haven't been able to take Kharkov. You can see that kind of defended itself. This Italian wasn't able to attack. So there's no assault there. I would have done an assault on the city if I could have, I think. The Germans attacked it. They reduced the unit. They've got it isolated, but it's not enough. You know, they have to actually destroy a unit to get will and take the city to get will. Right now, the Soviets are down to 5 will, which basically means if I can take 2 cities, I'm going to get 6 off of that if they're defended cities, because I'll be popping the unit the way I've been operating with this surrounding units. Very, very heroic defense of Smolensk. I threw the airdrops in. The Soviets used, I think, all 3 of their tanks in defense of Smolensk. And look at all the units that came in to hit it. Every single one of them except this one hit it. This one was busy popping a unit in the woods here. But I'm running out of units for the Axis. It's coming to the point where there's just not much more that I can do. And I was kind of hoping to end the Soviets this turn so I can spend more time preparing myself for a spring offensive in France. I don't think I can allow the Western Allies to just sit safely. If I can knock France out, that gets rid of significant, I don't know if they have much more coming, but they have some coming over the winter, and unfortunately they're going to get those built up. But what I really don't want to face is the Western Allies and the Soviets both coming in at the same time against me. So I really have to take the initiative there. We'll see what else happens here. Well, I ended up wasting that air unit. It's not a waste. The sortie is still left on it. I chose not to even move it forward for defensive purposes, which may be a mistake because the Soviets may be going to do a counterattack in order to do their best job of kind of damaging the Germans before the peace comes. But the big key that I tried to perform with the rest of the Axis points was to build sort of a good defensive perimeter so that I'm not going to, you know, see something horrible happen that reverses my opportunity to finish them off next turn. What's really important about next turn is it's the turn following that the Russian winter happens, I believe. Yeah, it's December, and that's the only time it happens from what I can tell. So I might be able to negate the Russian winter effect completely if I can win this this piece before it takes effect. And on the other hand, even if it does take effect, it's not necessarily that terrible. Like I've said, and Sal's mentioned, sometimes poor is worse than severe, and the Russians get poor, and the Germans get severe. But here's the difference. Because the Russians have poor, that means they're not going to be affected badly in the defense side. They're not going to have their totals halved. So only one side being halved is actually pretty damn bad. So I don't think that ever will work out terribly well to the Germans' advantage, unless, I don't know, they are attacking with nothing. Very low die roll on their own side, in which case they're probably not going to succeed anyway. And on defense, poor doesn't give you a penalty. So it just makes it difficult for the Soviets to actually launch a counterattack in the winter, which I've seen some games allowing that, and it actually kind of disturbs me. Well, now, wait a minute. The Germans are still going to be halved on defense. No. Yeah, the Russian winter doesn't sound pleasant at all for the Germans, the more I think about it. And I would rather not see that, although I'm sure it would be an entertaining thing to watch. I probably had it during the Barbarossa scenario that I did with the print and play game of this. All right. Well, I'm going to take a break and let the Russians get their last licks in, it looks like. Well, with the Soviets just barely hanging on here, I have enough troops that I could have launched some sort of attack, but I've chosen not to, because I think it would actually reduce the slim chance that I have of making it into the winter. And that time is the more important resource here. If I hit a German unit, you know, they've got points to rebuild things. It's just not really, unless I could somehow reduce their chances. So all I've done is I've pushed a unit up to here to fill in the gap. There's an important factor. Everything's in supply. Even things like this, it's isolated, but it's sitting in a city, which is an unlimited supply source for the Russians. So I'll be able to upgrade those units. They're not dead yet. The air power is all going to be upgradable. And, you know, now I have tons and tons of points to spend, more than I need actually, on rebuilding. And that should work fine. So for the diplomacy phase, we're in kind of this weird situation. The Germans have enough points to do something. They're allowed to throw another no event in, and they'll use them for that. I'm wondering if there was, you know, a unit like this that I would have rather moved. I'm not going to go back and deal with it. I know I wanted to kind of move this plane forward for defensive purposes, but that doesn't really reflect on this at all. So that's about where we are. And I am allowed to throw just the no event in, which seems like a strange use case. Now we go to the Western Allies, and there's nothing positive in that cup, so I'm going to throw a positive in. And now the question is, what do the Russians want to do? Well, they don't want to throw a positive in for the Germans, so I guess we'll pick. It's even in terms of, or they don't want to throw a positive, yeah, for the Germans. It's even in terms of the pick. And I kind of don't want to see Finland go out of my hands, but we'll see. And we get a no event, which means everybody spent money for very little effect. And now the Germans have a positive one in there, so they may actually draw. The reason throwing the no event in didn't have any effect is if the Allies were going to do anything positive, they had to put a positive piece in, and the no event would go in automatically with that. After quickly rolling the weather, and it ended up, not. I don't know. I never know if I'd rather see it severe or poor, but poor where it counts. Good if I had any operations, say against Bulgaria or something like that, that I wanted to undertake in the temperate zone. And this is a good time to start considering, hey, what's up? You know, do I want to declare war on something? Maybe this is the time to knock out the Netherlands if I'm going to do that. just some considerations there to put into my mind. And while I was thinking about that, I thought to look at the Moscow Treaty, because I'm still very bothered with something that I thought, which was that the Russians get production from occupied Soviet Union. That actually doesn't appear to be the case. The way this is read is occupied USSRs continue to conquered country. What I read into that, though, is in the economic phase, the active USSR receives production points equal to its factory count. Do not multiply. I think what that means is the Soviet production is not going to include the conquered territories. They wouldn't normally. But that I don't multiply their main production. They're going to be under some restrictions for buildup. And that strikes me as a lot more reasonable and a lot more interesting. It's going to be hard for the Soviet Union, especially after they get their demobilization events that come from the treaty, from the surrender, or whatever you want to call it, to actually, pose a significant threat to the German and Nazi powers. And that's opening up some thoughts. If I can take Netherlands or Belgium this turn, it might be worthwhile. Now, unfortunately, I don't have particularly useful stuff on the line for that. And chances are the weather's going to be crappy until spring after that. So, I don't know. The neat thing about that is that doesn't seem to piss off the appeasement policy, because I'm at war with the Soviet Union, and that makes these little Soviet satellites as well, for whatever value that is. If I wait until the Moscow Treaty gets signed, they go random. Now, I think the Moscow Treaty only prevents essentially fighting between Russia and the Germans. Let me look for that policy again. Basically, getting all this to interleave so that I can understand it takes a certain amount of effort here. The Soviet faction cannot declare war. The Axis cannot go into the active USSR. The Soviets can't go into occupied Russia. And they actually can't go outside the active USSR, except to go on the Soviet faction card or turn track. So they'd be kind of helpless miners in that case. It would be really nice to do these attacks now, before they see, I'm not sure what happens to them. This is the problem I have. Okay, I attack Belgium and it goes pro-Allied. I gotta see what happens about that. Will that start an Allied war? It should, but I'm not convinced that that's explicitly stated in the rules properly. And it is kind of disturbing if it ends up as a Soviet ally, because then I get a freebie attack on it. So I'm going to have to consider these things pretty carefully as I'm, understand them first and then consider them pretty carefully. And I'm having some trouble puzzling this out. Let me take a look at this. So you can declare war on a country, and this does not end the appeasement or Nazi-Soviet pact policy. You could also declare war on the faction. Then they give the initial declaration of war, and the Axis faction does not want to risk Poland joining the Western faction, therefore blocking access to the USSR. So it states that it's declaring war to the Soviet faction. Okay. So what that seems to indicate to me is, at least in that example, I could declare war on Poland but can't do anything about it at the beginning of the game. Otherwise, I would have access to the Soviet faction, right? I mean, if it went pro-Allied there. If we look at the appeasement faction, a Western counter cannot move nor be placed into an enemy country. Axis counters cannot go into a Western country. So as long as appeasement is there, even if I declare war on Belgium, they'd get set up, they'd become part of the Western faction, but I wouldn't be allowed to actually enter them until I go through the politics of, you know, of the warnings, etc., that would be applied at that point, I guess. I could just start it off by violating those warnings right off the bat, but by making maybe some territorial demands on Belgium or whatever, if Belgium ends up pro-Soviet, hey, I'm fine after the Moscow Treaty starts, but assuming it ends up going pro-Soviet. But if it ends up going pro-Western, I won't be able to enter it on the turn that I declare war, which could be problematic. So I'm really trying to think, do I have enough power here? Because to take out one of these, and I'm going to have to look at their counter mix. It's going to be kind of tough to see if either of them, neither has a whole hell of a lot. So I may be able to force them into a pro-Soviet stance. So the Netherlands is just going to have one counter. I could probably handle that. Let's see if Belgium's just as weak. So maybe I don't need to go through the Netherlands. Belgium has just one counter, but it's a regular unit. It's not a half-strength unit. That's an interesting comparison there. I'm probably going to declare war on one of the two, just because I do have some forces in the area, and I think with the air power that I have, I can take it out as long as the West is unwilling to do anything. Although to some extent, an invasion of the Netherlands is actually more difficult, even though this unit's easier to kill. I don't have to succeed in one turn. I just have to start it this turn. So I am going to go ahead with that because there's little advantage to attacking Belgium. If I succeed, it'll get me a pro-Axis chit in there. But the Netherlands could get me Belgium as an ally. It could cow them into supporting me. And that gives me one additional unit as long as Belgium can stay allied with me. Units are an important factor in the game. Of course, conquest also gives me German units. I still have a few garrisons left to build, which will be of some advantage. But, I feel like I'm going to need more troops than just the German force pool will provide. Now, of course, I am getting more troops as time goes on as well into my mobilization, but more of those garrisons strike me as a valuable resource. And then, you know, if I can't get Belgium that way, well, I can get them more traditionally, as it were. But by attacking the Netherlands, I'll be getting a pro-Axis space in Belgium as well as the peace in the cup if I succeed. Well, we'll assume I succeed, although after Norway, who knows? But, you know, there's no real risk with Belgium or the Netherlands. I can't take them both down, and I don't terribly want to. This is just going to be tougher. I only get one attack on them, but that's counts as a reduced unit, so that makes it a little easier. The good weather would have allowed me, I think, 2 attacks into here because I'm not really positioned for it. I've got as much air support as I could possibly need, more than I need. And I can't think of anything else that's going to help or hinder me here. The Russians have their ground support marker. That'll help them. And yes, I put them over there on the Soviet sheet. Way through the German turn, and I don't think it's going to happen. I've been absolutely stymied here. Now, maybe if I had done a couple of assaults, this would have worked better. And then over here as well, I did one assault with these guys. We reduced both of these. The Russians in there are also in Smolensk are also reduced, but they're just holding out and just winning all the die rolls. You know, the odds are not good for them to do this at all. Any given roll, I'd say there's been like at least a 30% chance, and most of these units have been getting 2 rolls each. And they're just holding on. And the reason I'm doing these as mobiles is so that I could launch an attack on here after this one seems to have failed. But now I'm coming up with just blanks. I don't know how I can push my way through to force the Russians to surrender. I need to get 5 points of morale. one of those cities, if it falls, is worth 3, 2 plus 1 for the unit. I might be able to, you know, launch an attack against one of these by breaking my way through here. I've used up my airplanes on counter-air and on Smolensk, and I'm just running out of real options to keep going here. Yeah, total failure. I made one more last-ditch effort to try to get these Italian units. If I could have pushed them out of Kursk, I think there would have been a possibility that I could have gotten into that hex, but I think that was actually a bit of a fantasy, because this guy would have been out of movement after he gets there. This would have been blocking, right? And I can't move through either of these hexes, so I would have never been able to make it there. And instead I've got this really weak Italian unit sitting there. I don't know how much of a risk that really is, because again, the Germans are in supply right now, I think. Maybe not. Uh-oh. Maybe I gotta do some more, because this guy's not in supply. I can trace back here, but this guy can't trace through there, and he can't trace to anything useful there. I think all the rest are. Okay. If I can clear this space, I get that. I get the supplies. But that, of course, will force me to use up another German unit. I don't want to leave something out of supply there. That's just asking it to be a target, and especially if it's an armored unit, that doesn't sound terribly pleasant, unless my production is really good. I got problems there too. I can't afford to get them into supply, because I spent production. I can't afford to repair all my planes either. I spent production on the Netherlands attack. I'm going to need my Air Force against the Soviets again next turn. There's no question there. So I think he picks up a low supply marker, which, as you can see, gives a -2 to combat. That's not pleasant. And just put it up there. I had some debates whether or not to take a pro-axis marker in Belgium. I forgot I have Finland here. I put it where it's supposed to go, and that's just not obvious enough to me. I need it in the front, center of the country to really understand what's where. Anyway, when I thought about that Finnish, well, then I thought, well, if I wanted to eliminate the Finnish, going into Belgium would have made sense too. I could have done them both in the same turn even. I'm worried because Finland has a pretty big looking army here. Of course, some of it may be these Mannheim forts, so it may not be that scary. It could just be like Turkey here, which has kind of turned out to be a bit of a paper tiger. However, if I could knock the Finns out instead, that might be worth more than Belgium, and I can always then attack Belgium, get myself another garrison unit, la la la. Although I should be able to conquer enough new things that I'll get additional garrisons. But then if I was doing that, I'm not as terribly interested in hitting just the Netherlands, which was actually the harder to do. And see, I ended up not being able to make an attack this turn, so I had to do it with my regular unit, so I had to do it with a garrison unit. Anyway, supplies are really what's constraining me from, say, saving that guy, perhaps, from being out of supply. And other issues that might be occurring. This is a very risky position. I could see the German front maybe not being in as good a shape as it was at the beginning of this turn in terms of being able to crush the Russians. They looked absolutely guaranteed, and it wasn't. And now we're going to go into the Soviet winter after this turn. Well, the Soviets were in no real good condition to conduct counterattacks. I did so, launched an attack here, an attack on this Italian unit, basically hoping to drop national will, because in a sense, for even minors like Italy, and another attack here on Turkey for the same reason, where I could have destroyed a unit. The idea there is Russian national will is going to come back magically at the end of the Moscow Treaty. I think it gets reset at 45, period, the end, boom, they're coming back and they're pissed. the bear awakens again. But if I can, you know, make it a little easier to knock Turkey or Italy out of the war, that's clearly a positive thing. And they're not going to recover that. You don't recover national will except by conquering things in there. It only really goes to the lead unit of the power involved. Now, I'm not so sure if what happens with Britain and the U.S., or Britain and the French both still in the war yet, or the U.S. for that matter. What's going to happen in terms of their national wills, and we'll see that when we get to it. There's a lot of rules in the game that I didn't really pay much attention to explaining or to reading, really. That's the way I like to you know, play with a game, is I don't really want to know everything ahead of time. I don't have the brain capacity to hold it all in place unless it's something that I play very regularly. And I think something of this size will never be something I play very regularly under any circumstances, even though I'm enjoying it quite a bit. Expenditure on the Soviet offensive was sufficient to prevent them from making a draw. The Germans did their draw, and the Allies actually went for a draw, both getting no events. So we kind of know what's in here. Still a decent amount of no events, a success, a failure, and then a pro-axis mark. Ready to go into the Russian winter. That's already set up here for the cold zone. I don't know, I may have the counters wrong, but I know what they mean, right? This low supply, although it didn't hurt the Germans, they didn't lose the unit for it, and they might have taken a step loss or whatever. They are going to be in a position where next turn, that's not as good a unit. That's one of their nice armor units, and it's kind of cut off. You know, I'm expecting to have supply back for it, I hope. I hope I have Russia defeated next turn. It's going to be more costly. We also have the French upgrades. They just replace some infantry. Doesn't have to be the first and second, but I chose to do it that way simply because those are good positions. Those are elite units, so they have, what, a +1 in combat? And they have another +1 for being French, so they're equivalent to regular German units, but they're also motorized. That means they cost more to move. It doesn't really give them any combat advantage beyond the elite. I wasn't able to buy all my, move this in here, Russian units. Germans, these they just got, but here they weren't able to buy their Africa Corps motorized unit. I don't know how big a deal that is. It's not a terribly potent unit. It's not like an armored unit being sent into play. They do have actually a tanks unit now, though. So now they have tank elements in play, so they can augment their infantry with that in places where they do wish that. That's not going to help much facing severe weather, though. And they've got a lot of draws against them here. So, for example, air power. It doesn't do them shit. All they can do is counter air with their air power, which they will be. But for the Russians, if they manage to get air support into play, they get to play it at the poor level, which means they get a +1 on it. So, and it's definitely harder than it was last time. Last turn we had Kharkov isolated. Now it's not. They left this isolated, Smolensk here. They seem perfectly capable of holding out forever there for some reason. Yeah, and we're still at 5 will. It's still 2 cities have to go. So there's some casualties on the German side. I'd really rather not lose the unit, but I wanted the diplomatic payoff. I wanted to make sure I had all my air support so I could knock out the Russian planes as well. Uh-oh. The Germans managed to take Smolensk finally, but that's all they managed to do. They failed down here at Kharkov with a couple of different attacks. All they needed, well, a retreat wouldn't do it here because they'd have to destroy it, so they had to do 2 attacks, and actually the second one probably couldn't have done it anyway. They also made an attempt here with the Turks, very slight chance. Basically, they're rolling +1 halved versus even. So if they rolled a 6, they would get a 3. If the enemy rolled a 1, 5 would also give them the 3. 4 would also give them the actually, if they rolled a 6, a 7, they could get a 4, and a 1 or 2 could do it. So there was some slight chance that they could have taken this out. So they got 3 of the 5 will that they needed to break, but they still need one more city, basically, which is why this would have been effective. They made an attack here, I think, as well, that was very unlikely to succeed. And I'm just not seeing, I've already conceded that I'm not going to succeed. I'm not seeing anywhere where I can find more points, more attacks to undertake. So, next month it should happen. Whether or not, let's see, we've got our supplies everywhere, I think. An attack down here wouldn't have done me any good. So, really, Kharkov is still the best solution for the attack at this point. At least we'll be able to recover some of our strength here. It's still going to be Russian winter. It's still going to suck pretty bad, but maybe, we can get some things built and fixed. We got lots of cool stuff coming in. A couple of tanks here, motorized stuff, to prepare us for the assault on the west. I think we can take France down if we can move quickly enough. And that puts us in an interesting position ahead of the game in Russia when we have to turn back there, except for the fact that all these Russian troops will be moving up in date. That's scary. So I don't know. That's kind of, I guess, the concept that I brought up originally, which was, if you attacked Russia early, they probably would mobilize some of those forces earlier. Well, the way that's baked into the system is this concept of Russia will surrender, Germany will accept that surrender, and then Russia gears up for a full-scale war and keeps fighting kind of a limited war after having granted those territories away, in the sense that, nations that you attack might become Russian aligned rather than Western aligned, and there doesn't seem to be any there isn't anything. It's just a 50-50 die roll, which is a little bit unsatisfying. There's no question about that. But there's a lot that this game kind of glosses over to provide a clean and easy playing experience that largely you don't have to do a whole lot of lookups in. Of course, when the naval rules come around, I'm going to have my hell with them. I always do, right? Soviet's job is mainly holding the line, so I tightened it up and made it a little bit thicker. I did launch one attack here from this hex to try to get some more support here, just to cut off some of the threat against, against Orel, which isn't really threatened, but against Kursk, which really is, as one of the potential places that could fall in this upcoming attack. But that didn't get me anywhere. So now I guess we go through the economics and diplomacy. We push into 1941. I don't expect it'll be too much more exciting in this winter terms than it was before. I don't even know what my chances really are of taking the Russians out in any given turn. There's a shot at it, but it's nothing guaranteed. It was much, much better before when I had the two cities isolated. Now the Russians are being able to kind of make a denser formation, and it's really tough. And with this terrible weather, it's really tough for the Germans to kind of punch their way through, especially now that the line's thick enough that they can't like slip through and end up isolating, a unit, or just here with the river line here, they're not going to be able to cut this easily. Kursk, if they get that, they win, right? So that's probably one of their best locations, but again, they'd have to punch through here in order to get an isolation. And you can see I got crappy Italians in the line there. Not a lot I can do about that because I don't have, replacement Germans up there. And over here, Bryansk, I got my Germans on that line. But again, that's going to be pretty rough unless I can take this hex, in which case we do have an isolation situation. Well, I take this hex and the Russians can't retreat here, which looks impossible. You know, they're going to have a fallback no matter what. One thing, though, is if I take this hex and the Russians fall back here, now this Russian can no longer retreat, and that makes it actually harder for me to take the city. And all I need is the city. And we open up the new year with yet another war declaration against Denmark this time. I had built some armor. Oh, I bet you that's reduced strength. Crap. I would guess. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. I'll have to look that up. That's going to make this iffier. The Danes are up here. I probably can't attack it easily, but I want to make sure to score something into that Soviet camp. I really don't want things in the Western Allied camp. And one of the advantages here, by being at war with only one side, is that I can ensure that these are going to be kind of, well, I'm counting on taking this, is what it comes down to. But if the Soviet war is over, I won't have the chance to take Denmark, and I want it to fall so that I get the alliance, or leaning towards Sweden towards the Axis Pact, which might allow me to get Sweden into my alliance, and that'll definitely give me options in Finland if that goes over, and certainly in Norway, whether or not it does. Makes it a very, very positive possibility there. Must be time to pack it in for the Germans. I even made attacks out here on the edges to try to see if I could budge something, get some addition later. Main attacks, boom, boom, boom. None of them cracked. Some of them multiple attacks, some of them assaults. Just can't get anywhere in this, and this weather has just got me stuck. Even took some damage here. Turks attacked again, no good there. It's going to be the Soviet turn. Not much they can do either. I mean, they have the advantage of the winter. This is, you know, the Soviets historically managed a kind of impressive counterattack and regain some territory during the winter, but I'm not going to be able to do that. Not with the armor just being these suckers, and I need to use them every turn just to hold on. It's real close, you know. It's real close. Over on Denmark, I didn't actually do anything. I'm planning on upgrading the German army. The Danes could, if they want to come out and play, that's a good way to lose. I can, as Denmark, give up Aalborg, and Copenhagen I can't afford to lose. I could take a shot at just taking Copenhagen. You know, I kind of screwed up with the Germans. I didn't drop my airborne. They're worth significant effect, and I didn't use them there. And I could have used them over, I could still conceivably, I've used everything up over here, could still conceivably use them over in Copenhagen to try to speed things along. I mean, this is the policy marker. It's not this sucker here. So I'm not sure what those two different markers stand for. I'll have to look that up. So this one's just kind of an automatic ending point, but this one here is really what I'm worried about. The purple one got put into place, I think, because of the East invaded event. And I mean, if the West invaded came up, it would also put a purple one in place. So there's kind of a, yeah, if you're not going to do anything, if you're not going to actually take on the major powers, if you want to go for kind of a limited war with the Germans, you have that opportunity, and it'll buy you some significant time before you have to face that sounds like a losing strategy, though. Not strip away territory, not weaken, not remove, say, the French army from the game, stuff like that. It doesn't sound wise to me. I'm trying to think what else. So what I'm worried about right now is, and I'll look this up later, the scenario ends. That gets positioned based on, I think, when the two-front war starts. So the earlier that starts, I think the earlier the game ends and the less time that the Germans have to stay in the war. That's what I remember of it. But it doesn't really affect any decisions at this point. Those decisions have all been put into play. Russians get a little uppity. They come out of Kursk and drive the German unit back. That cut off an Italian unit here, which I was able to destroy with a couple of attacks, isolated. And there goes a point of Italian will. Not a bad action. I don't think it weakened the line there. I spent some more of my production, which is beginning to grow to a fairly high number because of the factories in the Urals, which just keep incrementing until they hit 9. To launch an attack over here on these panzers. That didn't do me any good and probably was kind of a waste. One thing I was kind of thinking about, like I kind of think about things, is the paratroopers. Hey, I forgot to do that. Hey, I make a mistake here or there. This seems to be a game that kind of accepts those mistakes. I find that important because if a game doesn't accept mistakes, if you have to play it perfectly to, get any kind of historical results or any kind of believable results, I actually find that unbelievable because almost every campaign is filled with at least a few major blunders. And any game should be able to survive that. You shouldn't have to be pitch perfect to say match, either side in the historical scenario. It should be tolerant of some mistakes. And this seems fairly much in that order. And as we push into February up here, more Urals factories. I don't know if there's a limitation on those other than the 9. I assume that's all that's the only thing, but I'll have to look that up. Okay, diplomacy, kind of exciting here. Mobilization, not too big a deal, like I said. For the Russians, they built something in Kursk, which kind of makes up for that attack they made. Now, I mean, if they couldn't do that, they would have been in trouble. For the Germans, some additional infantry and armor down here. Otherwise, they recharged their airplanes and what they had on the front. You can see the German unit's been replaced as well. Oh, and this armor's been replaced or upgraded. Diplomacy was exciting, though. The Germans pulled a bad one, and the Soviets didn't really want to remove Brussels or the Belgian alliance. Instead, because it's a negative effect, it allows them to pick one that's adjacent to activated countries. Well, they took Yugoslavia as their enemy. Yugoslavia has a nice, or as the enemy of the Germans. Yugoslavia has a nice force pool, and that's going to cause a possible thorn in their side, maybe a desire to invade. And then, trying to think. I think I drew one success. I drew twice. The Allies drew a success and threw it here into Spain. And I think the Soviets did not manage to get a success. Had they gotten one, it's a hard call what they want to do. Bringing Yugoslavia in at this point, that would be a really possibly devastating blow in the Balkans and could really destabilize things. But they'd probably lose Yugoslavia at some point. They might be able to take things like Hungary out of the game. Might be able to cause some real threats to Germany. But in the long run, it would just be a time factor. And the question is, do you want to trade the Yugoslavs away for time, or are you willing? Are you willing to hold on to them, and see if the Germans have to play some sort of diplomacy to fix that? At some point or another, though, we stopped drawing from that cup. As soon as the Allies joined the game, there's no more draws from the cup. There's still potential political successes from events, etc. But for the most part, the war is kind of stabilized at some point. And you might not get Yugoslavia as the Soviets. So that's a factor to keep in mind. Anyway, we're at, I think, the end of this tape, and I'll send it up.